What is up, my friends? Good morning, and wow, what madness last night on the news circuit. So much drama, and today, guys, I wasn't planning on going live because it's my birthday, but we are talking about Roe versus Wade and the craziness that ensued last night, all the drama when it was leaked that there's a majority opinion coming out to overturn the landmark case of Roe versus Wade. We're going to talk all about it. I'm going to talk about what that actually means, which is not what you might be hearing on the news. Remember, it's not what you're hearing on the news. We're going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about how this happened and what's going to happen going forward. So thank you so much for joining me here on my YouTube Live. Thank you for being on the channel, supporting the channel, and all that good stuff. On your way, make sure you hit that like button so YouTube blasts this out all over the internet to a bunch of people, because there's a lot of choices here where you're looking at this. So I'm excited to have you here talking about Roe v. Wade and the potential of having this overturned. Now, I want to make a very important point right now, and I'll put my legal hat on. Here it is. Here's my legal hat. My lion's not sheep. Legal hat on. I did go to law school. I did practice law for a few years. Wasn't for me. I didn't do litigation, so I didn't ever argue in front of the Supreme Court or anything like that. But I know enough to be dangerous, and so we're going to talk about the legal side of this. I got some inside information from a friend of mine that I know that has some insider knowledge of this, who used to clerk for the Supreme Court. So I'm going to share what I was told on that front, and we're going to talk about what this means. Now, guys, I know what you're thinking. My YouTube channel is about finance, freedom, and fun, and so why are we talking about Roe versus Wade? Well, this kind of goes to the freedom and the fun part of it, and maybe even the finance part. Also, I think this is such a monumental thing in our country. I mean, this decision has stood for over 50 years. It's been criticized from both the left and the right, and so because it's so monumental, because this could be such a shift that would affect finance, freedom, and fun, I think it's important to talk about it. I'm going to tell you how I think it's going to affect it soon. Ooh, I got to sneeze. Thought I had to sneeze. I do have to sneeze. Oh, the beauty of live YouTube. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so this will affect finance, freedom, and fun, and I'm going to tell you how as we continue to talk about the landmark overturning of Roe v. Wade. So let me give you the punchline right at the beginning. And thanks for tuning in, guys. If you have comments, if you have questions, by the way, make sure you throw those in the chat box. I am in there, I see them, and I will respond, as I got all kinds of allergies for some reason. So the reason, guys, that I wanted to talk about this again is that I think it's going to affect finance, freedom, and fun for all of us all across the US, and I'm going to talk about how that is in just a second. But first, guys, let me give you the punchline. So contrary to what you might be hearing on the news, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, which the potentially leaked opinion says that it is, and we'll actually get into the opinion, we'll get into the analysis, I'll go through that with you guys. And please ask your questions. Give me your chats, give me your comments on the Roe v. Wade situation in that chat box, and I will answer those. If that happens, and if it's overturned, that only means one thing. I want you to pay attention here. It only means one thing. It means that the decision on how to handle abortion is going back to the states, which is the principle of our federalist system. It does not mean, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, that abortion is illegal. It does not mean that automatically every law granting abortion is struck down. That is not what it means. And you guys, I think that's so important to point out, because when something like this happens, you know, the masses all go crazy. Everyone goes nuts. I think there's already a bunch of people at the Supreme Court protesting, saying, you know, we want our abortion rights back and all this kind of stuff. But again, if this actually happens, and this is a leaked opinion, this has not yet been signed, it's not yet been the law, but if that actually happens, what that means is that it goes back to the states to decide their own laws. So for example, Texas could decide, like they have, that they have a law in place and this is how they're going to handle abortion. And California is going to decide how they're going to handle abortion, much like a lot of the other issues and laws in the United States. You see, when Roe v. Wade came out, the court basically invented this right of abortion, which didn't exist before, right? And so now all that would do, again, is just turn that back over to the states. So let's get into what happened. So apparently there was a leak of a Supreme Court opinion. Now, I want to just pause there for a second and talk about that, because that is a huge thing. That is something that I don't believe has ever happened before. It's a huge, huge issue, breach of security, breach of trust, breach of confidentiality. And the data that I have, the information I have, again, I've spoken to someone who clerked for the Supreme Court, and the information that I got there is that this was a leak, and I'm going to just kind of read to you what happened here. And so I'm going to read from my phone. So here, and this is on Twitter, so this is public information. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. By the way, let me say hello to some of our folks. Reba, thank you for joining. Thanks for being here. If you're on the broadcast, guys, do me a favor, two things. Throw a comment in a chat. If you have questions on this, I'll answer them, and also hit that like button so YouTube shows us to everyone on the internet. Okay, so let me read this to you. So first and foremost, here's what it says. A person called Amit Jain clerks for Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. This is from Twitter. As a Yale student, Jain blasted Yale for supporting Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. Jain was quoted in a 2017 Politico piece by Josh Gerstein, a reporter for Politico. Yesterday, Gerstein published the draft SCOTUS opinion on Roe. Coincidence or not? So I think that's a pretty strong correlation there. Obviously, we won't say whether that's actually the truth or not until we know. This was on Twitter last night. Again, the connection is to a law clerk that works for Justice Sotomayor, who's a liberal justice, and so the opinion was leaked that way. Now, guys, again, I think this is a huge breach of security. If I were the Chief Justice, I would probably come in and fire every single law clerk. Sorry for the good ones, but every law clerk would immediately be gone, and we would get new ones with the confidentiality, and which I'm sure is there, because this is just a crazy situation. But let's get into the actual article. I want to show this to you guys so we can kind of talk about it and see exactly what happened. Okay, so here's the article on Politico, again, written by a guy that has connections to a law clerk for Justice Sotomayor. So some interesting connections there for sure. Okay, so here's what it said. So the Supreme Court allegedly, has voted to strike down the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, according to an initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Alito, circulated inside the court and obtained by Politico from the allegedly, the law clerk that works for Sotomayor. Okay, the draft opinion is a full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitutional protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, which is called Casey, that largely maintained that right. And what Alito says in this opinion is that Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Now, guys, I do want to tell you that whether you're for this or against this, the Roe v. Wade opinion has been heavily scrutinized on both sides, the left and the right. And the reason it was scrutinized is it used some pretty interesting legal reasoning and rationale to basically invent this right of abortion on the federal level. Remember, we have a federalist system in this country, which basically means that, the states control most things that the federal government does not, right? And so when the federal government did this, it was kind of weird from the beginning. It's not in the Constitution, and so where does it come from? It just comes from the court, but the court is not supposed to invent laws, remember, guys. And I'm putting my legal hat on here, right? Putting my legal hat on and sharing with you that the court is not supposed to invent laws. The court is supposed to interpret laws, and then the Supreme Court is the ultimate interpreter of that law, right? Because they don't do that. Right? And that's why we have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, right, which is the presidency and all of that. We have the legislative branch, which is Congress. And then we have, of course, the judicial branch. And so this was weird from the start. It's been, like I said, it's been criticized from both sides. And so now what Alito is saying is that Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. He continues to say, we hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. It's time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. Okay, guys, I want to leave this on the screen, and I just want to highlight this for you. Okay, this is what this means. So when you hear all these people right now saying, abortion is now illegal and they're taking away the woman's rights and all this kind of stuff, that is not actually the case. All this would do, one more time, is give the power back to the states. Now, we know, and this is where the finance, freedom, and fun part comes in from the channel. We know that different states are going to handle this differently. And what I think you will see if this actually happens is that migration of people that kind of started maybe with COVID, maybe it started before that, but during COVID, during the pandemic, so many people decided to migrate, and let's go back to this, to different areas, me included. I'm one of them. I'm the example there, right? So people left places like California for whatever reason. Maybe it was politics, maybe it was the way they handled the pandemic business-wise, school-wise, kid-wise. Maybe people are leaving because they don't like what's happening in the schools in these areas, going to places like a Texas where we are now, like a Florida, and people are moving around based on their own principles, based on their own ideologies, and based on their own goals. And so what I believe will happen because of this is that will even escalate more, right? So you will get maybe places like California that are just deep blue states where, you know, anything goes, and they have all these laws, and they teach all this stuff to the kids and all the things that maybe conservatives don't like. And then you have states like Texas and Florida and maybe others where people go if they want some of these other laws in place, right? So that's what I think will happen, and that does affect the finance and the freedom and the fun for sure, right? But I just want to make this point because so many people believe that overturning Roe v. Wade is automatically saying that abortion rights are gone. No, that's not the case. It just leaves it up to the states, and that's why this article right here where it says it's time to heed the Constitution of our federalist system where the laws are in the hands of the states and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. So if you're in California and you elect someone who is pro-abortion, that's what you'll have. If you're in Texas and you elect someone who's pro-life, then that's what you'll have there. Okay, so the opinion is here. We won't read the whole thing. That would really bore you guys and maybe me, and it would feel like law school again. But I do want to point out a couple more things from the Political article, which is actually very good. Deliberations on controversial cases have in the past been fluid. Justices can and sometimes do change their votes as draft opinions circulate, and major decisions can be subject to multiple drafts and vote trading, sometimes until just days before a decision is unveiled. The court's holding will not be final until it is published, likely in the next 2 months. And guys, one thing before we do this, I want to ask you. So yesterday, I think we got to, I want to say 15 or 16 likes on the video. We're at 8 right now. Give me some more likes if you're on the broadcast right now. Give me a like, give me a thumbs up. Let's beat yesterday's broadcast. So here's what this means, and I think this is important as well. And this is why this leak is such a huge issue, guys. And the reason the leak is such a huge issue is that, you know, these decisions are not final until they are published, right? And this is just a draft opinion. And they're not saying it's final. Of course, everyone's acting like it is. Until that time, thank you for the likes, guys. Thank you. We're up to 9. So until it's published, it's just a draft and it's subject to changes. And the Supreme Court, I believe, is kind of like either a business or a political organization. They're talking about this internally. An opinion is drafted, then they're deciding who's going to vote which way, who's going to draft the minority opinion, and all of these other things. So the fact that this was leaked and revealed early is a very bad thing for the Supreme Court. You know, we cannot have the court undermined with these kinds of leaks. And if what I read to you guys was true, when where it was a law clerk for Sotomayor who revealed this to her friend at Politico because she's a left-wing activist, that is a very bad thing. And like I said, if I were the Chief Justice there of the Supreme Court, I would come in today and I would dismiss every single law clerk. Sorry, guys, I know there's a bunch of good ones, but we can't have leaks. And so everyone would be gone unless someone confessed. So I'd bring them all in. Hey, is anyone going to confess to this? And if you confess, then you're gone. And obviously there'd be an investigation. I don't know if this is a civil issue, criminal issue. I don't know their contracts or whatever. But if no one confesses, then everyone's gone. Pretty simple. And by the way, like, listen, I've had to do that in a company before. I had some situations happen, and we had to let go of all of the people of that level. So that kind of thing happens. But anyway, the opinion is not final, right? And so that's the issue here, is that we don't know. Now it's, you know, pretty good, gives us a pretty good indication and all that, but it definitely is not final. So let's keep going. So the immediate impact of the ruling as drafted would be an end to a half-century guarantee of federal constitutional protection of abortion rights and allow each state to decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. And guys, I want to keep reiterating this, that you're going to hear on the news stuff like, well, if now that this is overturned, abortion is illegal. No, that is not the case. All that means is that the rights go back to the state, right? And I was right. This was in the article. No draft decision in the modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case was still pending. So it is unprecedented, and it is a huge thing, and it really is not a good thing, that's for sure. We want our court to be sacred. We want our court to be insulated from this kind of thing. We don't want this to happen. Okay, the draft opinion offers an extraordinary window into the justices' deliberations in one of the most consequential cases before the court in the last 5 decades. Some court watchers predicted that the conservative majority would slice away at abortion rights without flatly overturning a 49-year-old precedent. The draft shows that the court is looking to reject Roe's logic and legal protections. And like I said earlier, I think the Roe v. Wade decision was kind of flawed from the start. It was an invented right. This isn't something that was there. And so, that is what happened. And now it looks like that's going to go away. Let's keep reading because I think this is actually a very, very good article. Okay, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. This is from the actual opinion. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement on the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. That is probably true. Person familiar with the court's deliberations said that 4 of the other Republican-appointed justices, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, had voted with Alito, which makes sense, in the conference held among the justices after hearing oral arguments in December. And that lineup remains unchanged as of this week. But guys, as I read to you earlier, that could still change. That is not final. And that is one of the things that makes this so unprecedented and such a problem because, this is something that's in the works. It's not a final thing. It's been leaked. And now you have all kinds of madness and all kinds of craziness. The 3 Democrat-appointed justices, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, are working on 1 or more dissents, and then how Chief Justice Roberts will ultimately vote and whether he will join an already written opinion or draft his own is unclear. Now, the document is labeled as a first draft, guys, first draft, right? So that's just crazy. And it includes a notation that it was circulated among the justices on February 10th. If the Alito draft is adopted, it would rule in favor of Mississippi in the closely watched case over the state's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And by the way, you see, guys, that it's not banning all abortions. The Mississippi wanted to ban abortions after 15 weeks. I think Texas has done the same thing. And so, everyone is up in arms saying my abortion rights are going away and all this kind of stuff. Not necessarily. It would depend on your state, and it would be a state law. Okay, so we had some questions, guys. So Reva asked, how did this get leaked? So let me read this to you guys one more time. I read this earlier. It's from Twitter, and so we know it's true. maybe not. It's from Twitter, but here's what it said, and here's how everyone thinks that this likely happened. All right, let's go back to this view here. So, a person called Amit Jain clerks for Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor as a law student, and this came from. I think I can put this up on the screen for you guys. Let's go to Twitter. Oh yeah, let's have some fun on Twitter. So let's go to screen share. Let me pull this up for you. So this came from Matt Wolking, who I don't follow, but looks like it's here, and I think you guys can probably see this. And let's see. Here we go. Okay, so here's the tweet. There it is. You guys can see it. All right. So here's what it says. A person called Amit Jain clerks for Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. As a Yale student, Jain blasted Yale for supporting Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. Jain was quoted in a 2017 Politico piece by Josh Gerstein. Today, Gerstein published the draft SCOTUS opinion on Roe. Oh, I like that tweet. So I guess I saw it yesterday. Pretty crazy, right, guys? That is nuts. And so Riva, that looks like that's how it happened. Riva, you said that this just sounds so crazy. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's unprecedented, like we said and like we read earlier in the article. It hasn't happened before, and so it's just a wild thing. And that is why, guys, I had to suspend or pause my long-standing rule of not working, not doing anything on my birthday, which is today, and talking about this, because I think this is just such a monumental landmark thing that we got to talk about it, because it not only affects abortion, but ultimately it affects finance and freedom and fun. I saw something really wild out of California. Well, everything out of California is really wild, but I saw something out of California earlier today that said that they are going to, or they're proposing a bill to pay for all abortions and invite anyone from any state to come to California to get an abortion. Crazy. But hey, it's California, so nothing is nothing shocks me. Nothing shocks me. Let's keep going on the article, because it is very good, right? So they don't say what it is, but it does say Politico received a copy of the draft opinion from a person familiar with the court's proceeding in the Mississippi case. The draft opinion runs 98 pages, including an appendix. And so wild. Let's read some more of this. The disclosure of Alito's draft majority opinion, a rare breach of Supreme Court secrecy and tradition around its deliberation, comes as all sides in the abortion debate are girding for the ruling. Speculation about the looming decision has been intense since December. Oral arguments indicated a majority was inclined to support the Mississippi law. Under long-standing court procedures, justices hold preliminary votes on cases shortly after argument and assign a member of the majority to write a draft of the court's opinion. The draft is often amended in consultation with other justices, and in some cases the justices change their votes altogether, creating the possibility that the current alignment on Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization could change. So again, guys, just want to reiterate, like, this is not final. This could still change. We don't know, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. The Chief Justice typically assigns majority opinions when he's in the majority. When he's not, that decision is typically made by the most senior justice in the majority. So that leads us to believe that we don't know what the Chief Justice is going to do, whether he's going to side with the 3 Democrat justices. It would still be a minority. It would still be 5-4, or whether he's going to write his own opinion. Let's talk about what Alito says, which is very interesting. So Alito is a George W. Bush appointee who joined the court in 2006, and he argues that the 1973 abortion rights ruling was an ill-conceived and deeply flawed decision that invented a right mentioned nowhere in the Constitution and unwisely sought to wrench the contentious issue away from the political branches of government. So I talked about this earlier, right? So when Roe v. Wade came down, and we actually studied it in law school, it's an interesting decision because it kind of invented this new right. And again, courts, the judiciary branch is not supposed to invent laws. They're supposed to interpret the laws but not create them. In this case, that's not really what happened. And it's been a point of contention for both sides for a very, very long time. I think it's time for a little drink of water. And so that's kind of what Alito's talking about in the opinion, right? So his draft ruling would overturn the decision. And what he says here is that Roe's survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant to the plainly incorrect. So he's really blasting it. Alito continues, adding that its reasoning was exceptionally weak and that the original decision has had damaging consequences. And by the way, I think, Supreme Court justices would only do this, obviously, if they have the majority, it seems like. And I never worked for the Supreme Court. I, don't pretend to know everything that goes on there, but this is such strong language that it leads you to believe that for sure he has the majority here. The inescapable conclusion is that a right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. Alito approvingly quotes a broad range of critics in the Roe decision. He also points to liberal icons such as the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe, who at certain points in their careers took issue with the reasoning in Roe or its impact on the political process. And as I mentioned, Roe v. Wade has been criticized on both sides of the aisle. This is not just a Republican thing. The decision has been criticized. And so Alito's skewering of Roe and the endorsement of at least 4 other justices for that unsparing critique is also a measure of the court's rightward turn in recent decades. So let's not forget that Donald Trump appointed 3 justices, 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court. And so, if you're for this, then you are excited that Donald Trump was able to do that, because that directly led to this happening. If you're against it, then you're probably even more upset with Trump. Roe was decided 7-2 in 1973, with 5 Republican appointees joining 2 justices nominated by Democratic presidents. Interesting how times have changed. You'd probably never see that now. The overturning of Roe would almost immediately lead to stricter limits on abortion across access in large swaths of the South and Midwest, with about half of the states set to immediately impose broad abortion bans. Any state could still legally allow the procedure. So this is kind of what I said earlier, guys. So what would happen with this, I just want to point out again, is that the issue would go back to the states. And if it goes back to the states, then each state can decide for themselves. And so Texas may decide one thing, California might decide another. Mississippi, where this case comes from, obviously already has a law that's being argued right now, so that law would become the law in the state. And so that may lead to even more migration. People might say, listen, I really don't agree with California on this, and I want to go live somewhere where they don't agree with that. Or, vice versa. If you live in Texas or, somewhere here, and you say, I want to go somewhere that's more liberal, then that may lead people to move to the more liberal states that allow abortion. And so it's just one additional thing, I think, that will continue to further divide and further politicize our country, which has become so divided and so politicized and so polarized in recent times. That, my friends, I will tell you, is not such a great thing. We want to work more towards unification of the country, no matter which side of this you're on, because a country that's so divided, that's so polarized, where people are just at odds, whether it's best friends or family members or just others, is probably not a good thing for the future and the direction of the country. Other countries, I should say, see that, of course, and they capitalize on that. If you look at the war in Ukraine, clearly Putin is capitalizing on the fact that we have right now a very weak executive branch. And because of that, he's able to basically do whatever he wants, because he's not going to be stopped by a strong U.S. I think whether you like him or you hate him, everyone can probably agree, or most people can agree, that this would not be happening under Trump. And the polls and the analysis all support that. So it's a really interesting thing. Let's take a look at some more of this, because it is a very good article in Politico here. So the Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion, the draft concludes. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. So that's the interesting part, right, guys, is that, you'll hear pundits and you'll hear all this stuff on the news that, now abortion is illegal and all this kind of stuff. Not the case. All this does is return the right to make a decision to the states. That's it, if this actually goes down, right? And so the article is good. You can read the rest of the Political article. Ultimately, what I want to say on this is, some of the stuff that I've already said, which is, I think somehow, some way, we as a country need to at least unify on the basic principles of what makes America America. We used to do that. I think that in the past, we all could agree, whether it was, I remember growing up, we would argue on stuff, Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, but ultimately we were all patriotic. We all agreed, that the United States was a great place. We all agreed on capitalism, things like that, most of us. But what has happened in recent times is that we have become so polarized, and we've just gone so far this way. Elon Musk actually posted a great tweet. I can show you guys that one, which I loved, about how the sides have just spread apart, so much. And it will probably take me a while because Elon Musk tweets so many things. Oh no, here it is. Let me show it to you guys. So This is really interesting to me, and this kind of goes to show you like exactly what has happened here. So how do I get this over? Let me show this to you guys. So check this out. So, okay, so here's like 2008, right? And if you look, this is Elon left of center. I'm going to give you mine. I was probably always a little bit right of center. Like this is me right there. This is Elon right here. Totally fine. Probably still get along, all good. The conservatives were over here, and he says my fellow liberal. I never considered them my fellow liberals, but for the sake of this argument, right? Let's look at this. So this is Elon here. This is the left right here. Now check out what happens. Like 2012, Elon is still here. I'm still here. Okay, but look at the center. You know, the center kind of starts moving this way, right? And so if I was here, I wish I could draw on this. But if I was here, then now look where I am. Now I look like I'm moving far to the right. The conservatives are still in the same spot. The liberals are like taking off this way to the left. And so Elon now finds himself still a little bit left to center. And then 2021, this is a great graphic, by the way. And then 2021, look what happens. You know, conservatives are in the same spot. I mean, he's spot on here. Conservatives are in the same spot. Elon's in the same spot. Remember, I'm still here. No, sorry, here. I'm here. Okay, Elon's here. The center, look how far the center has moved because let me move this over. Because the left has moved so far left, right, and has been hijacked by these woke progressives that now anyone who's right of them is a bigot, is a racist, is a fascist, and all this stuff, right? I mean, guys, I want you to think about this. Donald Trump was a Democrat. Donald Trump is from New York. Donald Trump was friends with all of the Democrats, all of the entertainers, all of these people. The minute he ran for president as a Republican, the left took off over here and said Donald Trump's a racist. I mean, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. And how many people have fallen for it is the really crazy part to me, right? And so now, I mean, I identify with this graphic big time because, you know, like I said, I found myself here, okay? So I was always kind of little right center, not really that political, not really into a lot of this stuff. And then watch what happens, you know, as the center moves to the left, okay? And yep, JG said it started with Obama in 2008. There it is. Great call, JG, right? So as the left went, I was going to say went nuts. As the left went nuts, I don't know how else to say it, right? And took off over here, I'm here, so now all of a sudden I'm a little bit to the right, and then 2021, all of a sudden I'm a, you know, radicalized conservative. I mean, it's crazy to me that the normal people, and most people, guys, are right here. Most people are in the center. Most people are in the center. And so, you know, going back to kind of what I'm talking about here with the Roe v. Wade situation, is that, you know, having the country become even more polarized, even more separated is probably not a good thing. And look, the right obviously thinks that the people on the left are crazy and that they're going nuts, and the people on the left think that the right is going crazy and the right is going nuts. What is the answer to kind of get everyone back together? Can we get everyone back together? I wish I knew the answer to that one. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. I don't know. We will see what happens. But I will tell you that even though, you know, when you read this article, when you read the decision, if this is the way it goes down, if you do that and the conclusion is that, hey, this just goes back to the states, it's not that big of a deal. However, for a lot of people, they don't see it that way. They see it as we're getting rid of a fundamental constitutional right, which is not true. It was not a constitutional right. It's not in the Constitution. It was a made-up right by the court, which really should not be making up laws. But that's how a lot of people will see it. I mean, look, people, especially in today's day and age, make stuff up all the time. I mean, look at that law in Florida. They called it the Don't Say Gay bill. That's not even in the law. They just made it up. And the news ran with it because there's this 24-hour news cycle that just wants headlines, right? And so that's what we're seeing now all across the board. So ultimately, what's going to happen? I don't know. We will see. But I want to thank you for being on here. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Throw some comments in the chat or the comments if you want me to answer some afterwards and online. But like I told you guys from the beginning, it's my birthday today. I typically don't work on my birthday, so I am out of here, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for tuning into the channel. I appreciate all you guys.